Welcome to Cars on Call. I'm automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I'm here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran. And Stephan, you're out of town because you had a family emergency, but it's all okay.
Everything's okay, so yeah, so far so good. We got Dad home today, and that's why I'm podcasting from his office from the iPhone. You're in charge of the technology today, so I'm just along for the ride.
Beautiful. I've met your dad on several occasions. A wonderful man, and he is a young 90 and just a great guy. Absolutely a great guy.
Oh, absolutely. They don't make them like that anymore.
They really don't. And of course, one of our early shows, you talked about your mom who's French driving a V8 Mustang and getting the tail out.
Yeah, great story. Yeah,
Ooh
she's
la
doing
la.
great too. Oh, yeah, ooh la la, exactly.
Yeah, great couple. All right, we gotta. This is a little bit of a different thing because we're gonna just, Adams is gone. He's unavailable, sadly, and we are going to just kind of wing it a little bit and just have some fun. This is less scripted than most of our shows. Not that they're scripted, but we're just gonna kind of wing it because there's a few topics that are out there that are important we have to get to. So we're going to start, Savannah, with you. There is a new wave of tariffs that were announced. Donald Trump announced that he's going to impose 25% tariffs on automobiles made outside of the U.S. coming to the U.S. Obviously, a lot of people are scrambling. As you can imagine, if you look at the landscape, Mercedes, BMW, Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, that's the Germans, but of course, Japanese, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Mitsubishi, so many manufacturers from outside of the country will be affected by this. And we spoke briefly earlier, and you have thoughts.
Yeah, this is kind of a rant. These tariffs really they piss me off because economically they're just bad, and the rhetoric around them. But kind of got to think about where we are today. We are a global marketplace, and not only a marketplace, but everything we have relies on this cog of things are built in one country, assembled in another. Part of the product comes from one country. You may make a piece of it, but then you assemble it. So it's an interdependent global economy, and throwing a tariff on the automobile industry is going to have huge repercussions past the automobile industry. Well, and I'll give a little bit of history, but kind of get a big view here. Currently, 50% of all vehicles sold in the United States are imported. Okay, they meet imported the definition
Definition.
of an import. 60% of all parts in all vehicles in the United States are imported before final assembly in the United States. So that means, best case scenario, a made in the USA truck could have 60% of its parts not even made in the United States, but it's assembled in the US. Um, so for US, I kind of misspoke there. Um, for a US made vehicle that truly meets the criteria of completely US made, 15% of parts are imported. I mistakenly said 50, 60.
Okay.
So,
Yep.
so but it's 15%. So even there's no such thing as a pure US made vehicle. There's going to be imported parts. And the thing about that's been made about the tariffs is, well, tariffs will return automotive manufacturing to the US. You just can't flip a switch and have a automobile assembly plant turn on. Okay, the infrastructure to change the assembly lines, to build an assembly line, to build a plant, to get your on-time parts distributing, you just can't turn on an automotive industry. I mean, it can't happen. So the idea that you can have a tariff today and a car made in the U.S. tomorrow is not going to happen. That is years down the road. If we go way back, 1930, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was the first time the U.S. imposed big tariffs.
What year was that?
1930.
By
And
the way, let me just interrupt for a second and just remind our listeners that what Stefan is saying is almost word for word what was said by the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. S- Smoot, Hawley, tariffs. Anyone? Smoot, Hawley, Tariff Act. Anyone? You don't remember that?
No, I don't. Oh, that's great.
Results in
Um,
anyone? Higher prices.
this,
Anyone? All right. Sorry, Stefan.
Bueller.
Bueller. Yeah.
So we started having industrialization, and America became a big manufacturer, and so they started imposing high duties on imported goods to try to keep it all here. Where it just did not work. It was not effective, and they scaled it back. After World War II, once again, the U.S. automotive industry is still dominating the global market. However, there was, remember, fierce competition from the Japanese in the 60s and 70s. Our generation remembers all these little Japanese cars coming to the U.S. and people kind of laughed at them, and so that'll never be a thing. We had some Volkswagens coming, and there's always the BMWs and the Mercedes, but the everyday non-luxury vehicle import industry really took off in the 60s and 70s. When the US automotive industry started making a lot of noise, and what the Japanese basically agreed in lieu of tariffs was, and they had what were called the voluntary export restraints. So they limited the number of the vehicles they sent to us. So essentially, it was you could call it a kind of tariff. But the thing that you'll remember, Steve, we still till this day the chicken tax.
Yeah. From that was
So
LBJ, I think.
yeah, exactly. So in 1960s, the Germans and the French imposed tariffs on our chicken imports. We were just pumping out chickens, sending them to Europe. The farmers in France and Germany got upset about it. It was hurting their poultry farmers. So they put huge tariffs on our chickens. So, of course, retaliatory tariffs is what happens. You piss off a country. So, what do? They fight back by putting a tariff on you. So, LBJ put a 25% tariff on imported light trucks, as well as tariffs on brandy, potato starch, and dextrin. But so over the years, the tariffs kind of went away, but the 25% tariff on light trucks has kind of remained, and it is what's called the chicken tax. But think about the ramification of what this has done to the face of the automotive industry in the United States. So now with this tariff, light trucks and vans don't have any outside competition. So Ford, GM, Chrysler, Dodge at the time, Ram, make more money selling pickup trucks and LTVs, like trucks and vans vehicles. So of course they're going to do all they can to sell more of these. So now a truck goes from a utilitarian vehicle to a Ford Platinum, totally decked out leather, becomes a luxury vehicle. F-150, number one selling vehicle. They're making their profit. So now the automotive manufacturers make more money with these. They want to sell more. There are more on the roads. Now, on our road, look at our highways, all SUVs, light trucks, and vans, and the passenger cars have gone away. That's not good for fuel consumption. It's not good for passenger safety, road wear use, all that has gone up. So the ramifications of the tariff are actually a lot more extensive than just simply you say it's just a truck, it's just 25%. But we've talked about this, Steve-O. As a result of this chicken tax, we now and these earlier tariffs of foreign automotive manufacturers came to the United States and built plants. Where was the last place they wanted to build a plant? Detroit. They built them in the South, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina. The automotive industry, foreign automotive investment in America building plants has been in the South because they can stay away from the UAW because the UAW cost and legacy cost are extremely high, and the foreign manufacturers just don't want to deal with it. So it's been interesting to think about all these tariffs have created a new automotive industry in the South, not in Detroit, not where the UAW is.
Is that bad? That's where you live. Isn't that good?
Oh, it's great for us. We are ecstatic to have Mercedes in Alabama. But the UAW, of course, now wants these tariffs. They want these tariffs. I don't
Right.
know, it's crazy, but these tariffs are going to change the automotive industry. It's going to change purchasing. It's going to hurt consumers, because new car prices are going to go up. Used car prices are going to go up because people are going to be moving from new car to used cars. So we're going to see an increase in the prices. And then we can talk a little bit about manufacturers who'll be hurt worse than others. But I just think this is a horrible idea. And there's been no economist to tell you that it's going to be good. And then he told the CEOs that they can't raise their prices in spite of the 25% tariffs. And then he said he didn't tell them that, but
Well, you
um,
can't, you can't,
yeah,
you can't tell a company to not raise their price. You can tell them, but
they
there's
told.
it's only by force of law. I would say a couple
So
of things. Most importantly, and again, I think this is most importantly, whenever I hear any discussion of this, and I see it a lot in automotive news, and I'm hearing it from you too, and this is a question I have. Why is everyone so certain this is like forever?
it,
Everybody that I've heard that is like saying what you're saying, which of course 100% true. I do not favor a 25% tariff for imported vehicles for all the reasons you mentioned. It raises prices, it stymies competition, and it artificially raises prices, and we have a globalized supply chain. So it's really stupid because we're not going to go away from a global. It's fantasy to think that we can have all the supplies and all the parts and all this. It's such a complicated thing making a car. You're going to bring it all in house. It's impossible. You can do that for chickens. You can do it for vegetables. You can do it for dairy, but you can't do it for a car. So for all those reasons, I would say that. But literally every single response I've heard to this says the tariff is going to go into effect April 1st and it will never, ever stop. And my thing is, wait a second, that's not how this first 3 months of Donald Trump's administration has gone. There's been a lot of bluster, and then a lot of these tariffs have been threatened and pull back and threaten and pull back and threaten and pull back. I don't think it's realistic to approach it with this. This is set in stone and will never, ever change.
right. And the other thing is they're trying to figure out, they don't even know how to calculate a tariff with imported parts on the vehicle, trying to figure out what the imported content is. They really don't, that's, they don't even have a way to do that. But
Yeah,
so
what
let's talk.
if you have a car that's 43% imported or 57% imported, what is it? It's 57% of 25%?
Yeah, exactly. What about that chip? Wait a minute, that chip. Remember when Porsche couldn't bring some of their vehicles to the U.S. because they had a Chinese chip in them that we didn't want or something. So
Yes.
I mean it's crazy. But I just wanted to briefly go over a couple of manufacturers
Okay.
to give you an idea of what kind of foreign content. Amazingly, Acura, who really cares anymore, but all of their vehicles are U.S. assembled except for the ADX SUV, which is made in Mexico. But once again, they're assembled to the high part content, and then they're going to have to figure out what the part content is. Every single Audi is imported into the U.S. That's that's going to be across the board 25% tariff on
Every
every
Porsche.
Audi. And yeah, we'll get to Porsche at the end because I got an interesting thing to talk about Porsche. BMW, the SUVs are assembled in the United States of foreign parts. That's going to be a tough one to figure out. For Buick, only the Enclave is made in the United States. Every other Buick's imported. Cadillac,
From China.
yes. Cadillac, they're made in the U.S. except for the Optique, which I don't even know what that is, made in Mexico. Chevy Blazer, the Equinox, Mexico. Trailblazer, Trax, Korea. Silverado, U.S., Mexico, Canada. It's a complete mix depending on which exact vehicle it is, where it's made, what day it's made. That's going to be a nightmare. Ford, everything is U.S. except for the Bronco Sport, Maverick, and the Mach-E. They come from Mexico. They can just leave the Mach-E in Mexico as far as I'm concerned. Mercedes SUVs are made in the U.S. of imported parts, but still a lot is manufactured. Now we talked about Porsche. Now here's what's interesting. So the you know Mercedes, everybody except for Audi has now putting cars together or building something in the United States. I'm here to say, and this I want your thoughts. You're a Porsche owner. Any Porsche owner would gladly pay 25% more to have a 911 made in Germany than a 911 made in Vance, Alabama. I think a Porsche owner who buys an SUV, AV doesn't care, but I think the core Porsche file, the 911 guy or gal who thinks of the white sack and all that, they want their Porsche made in Germany. And they're not going to be happy about a 25% tariff on it, but they don't want it built in America, and they'll pay 25% more.
I completely agree. Being a 911 guy, you're 100% right. You want it built by these German guys. And I read about a really interesting car that was being sold on Bring a Trailer or something. And it was a special 993 that was delivered in Germany, but it was delivered to a Porsche engineer. He worked at Porsche. And unbeknownst to me or anybody else, the guys that built the engines, they would find a few engines that were just unusually good. You know, they test them all, and instead of having a 350 horsepower, there was some that would come off the line with like 375 horsepower. So you put those aside, and they were for Porsche 911s that went to employees or engineers.
Oh, sweet.
And isn't that cool? That just tells you what the Germans are like. They're very particular, very meticulous, and they build the cars a certain way. That's not going to happen if it's built in, in Savannah, Georgia or something.
Right.
I will let me say a couple things about the turkey, the chicken tax, because it's worth mentioning this. Despite the chicken tax, the Toyota Tundra sells a fraction of what the F-150 does, and they've been building those in Texas. The Tundras are all built in Texas. They're all U.S. built, U.S. content mostly, and they're built in Texas, and they have been for at least 20 years, maybe 25 years. And they cannot compete well with the F-150 or the Silverado. Americans like American trucks, and it's always been that way. Secondly, the Nissan Titan was built in Indiana, and it completely flopped, and they no longer sell it. And they tried for 20 years. So, and then the other point about the chicken tax is that I dispute anyone who says that the chicken tax is why we drive a lot of big SUVs, Yukons and Tahoes and Navigators. And that's because I think you can't ignore the fact that, hello, this is what customers like.
Yeah. I mean, I still believe that pushed us there, and the rest of the world has kind of fallen in step behind with the SUVs. But I think the idea of having these massive vehicles on the road, and it's okay to have a massive vehicle, is because of the large trucks, the F-150s and and that class 1500 truck, their predominance on the road made everybody think that, yeah, it's okay to now own a family hauler that weighs more than that, that's that big. And Europe still, you see the smaller sedans. I mean, the smaller SUVs, they don't have they can't go as big as we. But I still believe that this transformation to the massive and the fleet size in America of the larger vehicles goes back to this chicken tax, because it made the companies. I mean, think a truck is supposed to be a work vehicle,
Yeah.
and
Well,
now they're not work vehicles. Now they're just Texas Cadillacs for
it,
their
my
test.
for my entire life, Americans like big cars, and the chicken tax had nothing to do with a Ford station wagon or an Oldsmobile, Vista Cruiser from the 60s and
Yeah,
70s. Had nothing to do with the chicken tax, and you had nothing like that in Europe. Americans just like these big trucks because you can put stuff in them and you can tow your boat. And it's the only thing that's changed is instead of a Vista Cruiser towing a boat with four kids in it, now you've got a Suburban towing a boat with three kids in it or two kids in it. And moms, how many Yukon Denali's do you see driving around that are driven by women? I'd say most of them are driven by women.
yeah,
And they like that
absolutely.
they can put their kids' friends in there. They can put all the stuff in there. They don't have to worry about space. And of course, for the manufacturer, they take a truck platform and put an SUV body on it. It's cheap to make. And honestly, people just like these things, just like they like the Vista Cruisers or I'm trying to think of some of the Mercury Colony station
Oh, yeah.
wagon.
The
There's some,
Squire,
right, the Country Squire.
the Country Squire.
So to come back, and we got to wrap this up, but to come back to the tariffs, I would say number one, I hope they are temporary, because if it goes on more than 6 months, it's going to hurt everybody in automotive. It's a bad idea, number one. Number two, and you can't ignore this, Hyundai said we're going to invest $3 billion into America, and Honda said they're going to start building their Civics in Indiana. Those are two good developments. So it's not all bad. And I hope that we get more investment in the United States and more manufacturing. Those are good jobs for good people, and the tariffs go away. That's what I hope.
All
All
right, I
right.
just want to do one little safety thing.
Well, we got to do corresponding first.
Oh, car spotting. Okay, that's right. We got an
Cannot
agenda.
forget this.
Yeah.
I saw a weird, this is a rare car spotting, and there's certain cars that this is true for all cars. If you see when Porsche to just to use 911, when Porsche sells a 911, the chance of that 911 being on the road in 30 years is very high. It approaches 90%. They don't go away. And to your chagrin, the same is true for a Forerunner. It's going to be around in 30 years. A Tacoma pickup's going to be around in 30 years. But most cars, the Country Squires we were talking about, the Vista Cruisers we were talking about, they're gone. You're never going to see them. They melt away, they die, and that's it. And that's true for this car. Let's see if I can bring it up. I saw in Georgia, I was visiting my son. I saw this car, and the one I saw was the 90s green. But it was the exact same car, but in green. The very 90s teal green. And I can't bring up the picture on my screen. But this is it. It's a 1991 Saturn SC1. Actually SC2, because it's
I
got the
see too. Right.
covered lights. But Stefan, these cars have all gone away. Do you remember when they were launched?
So yeah, the whole Saturn thing to me was weird. I never understood it from the beginning, and it was all I can really remember about it. They tried to come on with this whole new mindset of manufacturing. They built a new plant in somewhere in Tennessee, and they kind of promoted the idea like infinity, this idea of this new manufacturer, this new way of making cars, but the product was crap.
It
Um,
was supposed to compete with the Japanese.
yeah, and the car was like ABS plastic. The panels were some kind of a plastic. There were all kind of issues, terrible quality issues. Then they kind of had an SUV. Their design, they had a separate design house. I never liked. I thought the idea was goofy from the beginning. The product never caught my eye. It surely was never a competitor to the time. That would have been an Acura Integra, a two-door Integra. So they had, it was all talk with very little product that none of it I found desirable.
So you were negative on them.
That was from the, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting because again, it was a way for GM to do something that would compete with the Japanese, and they really tried. They built it in the South, just like at that time Honda was building cars in Ohio, but they said we're going to build it in the South. They try to have a whole different approach to make basically a General Motors Honda Civic, and it just flopped. The quality was terrible. It's kind of goofy. I agree with the body panels being plastic was kind of goofy. They had an ad where a shopping cart banged into the side, and you can say, all right, it didn't damage the side with the shopping cart. But they came out and they had different ads which I thought were pretty good, and they really tried to compete with Honda and Toyota primarily. And they ended up having these goofy cars, a sedan and a coupe that they didn't make anybody happy. They just weren't any good.
They were trying to create an idea, an ethos, a culture behind a vehicle, brand new vehicle. but it's the product that creates that. You don't start with that. This you don't, you know, they try to create this desire about this whole new company and what they did, but the product just didn't go with it. Create the product first, and then build that ethos around the ethos will build around that product. That whole culture will build up around the product if it's great.
Steve Jobs was such a visionary. I think the longer he's gone, the more people appreciate just exactly who he was. He said, people talk about quality all the time, and this is back in I think the late '80s that he said this. And he goes, the only companies in the car industry that don't talk about quality are the Japanese. And he goes, you never hear a Japanese company advertising their quality. It's interesting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they don't need to.
Exactly.
It's expected because it's there.
By the way, this is off the subject, Stefan, but I'll throw it in there because this is fascinating. I saw a quote from Steve Jobs, and this would have been in the early '80s, maybe the mid '80s. And you could tell it's an old quote because he's not wearing a black turtleneck. He's wearing blue blazer and a tie, like a rep tie. But he said the best teacher that ever was Aristotle. And he said Aristotle could teach, and he had so many philosophies. And he goes, you can read about Aristotle, and that's great. He goes, but you can't ask Aristotle a question. He kind of smiles. He goes, well, you can, but you won't get an answer. And he said, I think that at some point the computer will develop to the point where you can actually use your computer to ask Aristotle a question and get an answer. We're there. It took
Yeah,
it took 45 years, but now with ChatGPT and AI, Stefan, we can ask Aristotle a question.
and they could put him in a movie. Absolutely, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, he was Steve Jobs was. I'm a big Mac guy, Apple fan, and his leadership style was a little difficult for a lot of people, but such a amazing visionary of putting a product in a hand of your hand that just works.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. So RIP Saturn, and I'll say this: you see a lot of 35-year-old Honda Accords, Honda Civics, Toyota Camrys, Toyota Corollas. You see a lot of them on the road, and of course, a lot of Forerunners. How many 35-year-old Saturns do you see?
I haven't seen one in forever.
And I saw one. I stopped because I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa. So, all right, that's the Saturn thing. Let's go to safety.
All right, so I want to just like I said, my I had to come up a little bit of emergency from my father who got sick. He's doing great, but I was taking my mother to the hospital. I was driving their car, I was in the garage, and because it's a little bit hard for her to get out of the vehicle, she wanted me to pull the vehicle out of the garage, the driveway, so she could get into the vehicle. Now, here is something that I think is very important, and I immediately, when I got to the hospital, I asked my dad this question. I said, Dad, when you pull the car out of the garage, put it in reverse to let mom get in the car, do you leave it in reverse or do you put it in park while she's getting in the car? He said, I put it in park. I said, right answer. But I got to thinking about it. I bet there's plenty of people that are having passengers get in and out of the vehicle that leave the car in drive or in reverse. And you really, if you're, I took care of plenty of people that got run over by their own car or got knocked down by the car. Something happens, your foot comes off the brake, the car's in reverse, the door is going to take them down. I mean, it's just the door is just going to knock them down. So, little public safety and not just a PSA public safety announcement. When you have passengers entering and exiting your vehicle, just please put it in park. Or, if you're like Steve in the stick, put it in neutral, with your foot on the brake.
Yeah, some cars I've driven, it's automatic. You put the car into drive, the doors lock. And in
Right.
order to get it to open, you put it into park, and then the doors will unlock. But of course, it's easy to leave it in
Oh,
reverse and hit the unlock button to let your person in. I agree with that. Like when you think about your days as an active, busy trauma surgeon, what were some of the things that happened? Like, did you ever see someone who the door knocked them down, then they got run over by their front tire, or any kind of weird thing like that, or they got pinned between the car and their garage door, or I can imagine this happening when you're backing a boat into water or something like that.
Yeah, the one that we saw typically, well, a really terrible one was a lady as it was in her car. She shut the door, she put it in drive, and there was a bee had flown into her
Oh
vehicle.
no.
And she was freaking out and tried to get out of the vehicle, but it was still in drive. And she got one leg out on the ground, and then that made her rotate, pulled out, and then the I don't want to get too graphic, but the rear tire went over her pelvis.
Oh,
Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. Um, and then we had plenty, plenty of people that got
most people are not aware. Any kind of pelvic injury is magnified by the fact that the blood supply is
right.
so huge that if you damage your pelvis, you bleed.
And the other one that we would see frequently is somebody gets out of their car, they forget to put it in park, and then they try to stop the car or get back into the car. So they actually made it out, but the car is going. So they're trying to stop. They tried to stop the car. It's just kind of if something's rolling your natural instinct, you think you can stop it, you can't, or to get back in it, but it's not that easy. So yeah, so the easiest way is just. But I think, Steve, I didn't think about it. You were talking about more modern vehicles, and I need to look on my pickup truck. But I know if the car is in drive, I think from a safety standpoint, most vehicles, if you pull the handle, it automatically unlocks it, and that is so that you can extricate yourself in case of a crash. But most cars now have warnings. If you open a car door with it in drive, there's all kind of warnings that go off. I know my truck does that. They'll tell you, car door ajar. But yeah, you're right. That's a great safety feature to help prevent those kind of injuries.
My 911 sends off a warning if the car is running and I open the door. It's in neutral.
Right.
The parking brake's on. Doesn't matter. You open the door with the car running, it gives you this warning. So, well, thank you for that, Stefan, and safety update. I want to talk before we wrap up about Nissan because it's very, very much in the
Who?
news. Yeah, Nissan, right?
Oh, Nissan. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
everyone forgets about Nissan.
Big
That's yeah,
Ultimate Energy.
yeah. A big Ultima Energy. We had a show about that. For anybody who's curious, just Google Big Ultima Energy and you'll see it.
It's
Um,
hysterical.
so about 3 months ago, Nissan announced quietly, it actually was leaked from an executive that Nissan had 12, they said 12 to 18 months to live, and they were losing money at such a pace that they could not survive much longer. And then Honda stepped forward and said, "Hey, we'll merge with you and we'll help you. We'll have a combined company." And then that blew apart, apparently because Nissan did the due diligence and looked at the deal and realized this is going to be a takeover, not a merger of equals. So that kind of went away. But now Nissan has a new CEO. He's not Japanese, and he's very excited, and he's going to make this company go. I have grave doubts. I have two thoughts about it. Number one, I don't think they're going to. I don't care how enthusiastic your CEO is. I don't care how smart he is. It's very difficult to turn that around. You can do it, but it's hard. And I'm not sure this guy who I've never heard of is. I even forgot his name. I'm not sure he's up to the job. Number two, probably Japan Inc. will not allow Nissan to just go under, just like GM was not allowed to go under and Chrysler was not allowed to go under. I think that Japan Inc. will save Nissan in some way, either an infusion of cash or a merger with a more friendly competitor, or the Honda deal will be resurrected and Nissan will have to swallow it. But I think Nissan's going to go not going to go away. So I had a couple, and I want to talk to you about this too, Stefan. I had a couple thoughts about what I would do if I were CEO. And what I would do is I would say make Nissan the affordable brand. Honda and Toyota have been going upmarket. There's room for something underneath them. Nissan has lots of dealers. They have a lot of cars out there. They're going to continue to make money with repairs at the dealership and that kind of thing. So I think the dealers can do okay. And of course, it is so underestimated how much money manufacturers make, not from selling cars, but from selling parts. So Nissan makes billions of dollars every year from selling parts. That's going to continue. And if they say, okay, we're going to take the money we make from parts and then scale back a lot of our costs, advertise less and condense and decrease the number of models, I think they would do well. And here's how I would do it. Number one, I would sell a lot of my Nissans that are kind of stripped to the fleets. I would become basically a rental car supplier. Number one, I'd start that. Like, I don't care. We're just selling a lot of cars to rental cars. We're going to become the rental car manufacturer. Number two, I would immediately drop Infinity. Infinity sells less than 100,000 cars a year versus Mercedes, which sells about 350. Lexus sells about, well, Mercedes is 320-ish. Lexus is about 350. BMW is about 350. Infinity, forget it. They lose money for sure. Just dump it. Just tell all the dealers you got to close right now. Number three, I would bring back immediately the X-Terra. People like Forerunners. They like these stripped down four-wheel drive cars. They're cheap. You just take your pickup truck thing, your pickup truck platform, and make an X-Terra. They used to make it. That would make money because you could charge a decent amount of money for them. They cost very little to make. And I would drop all the cars except for the Sentra, and I would have a Pathfinder, which would be very much for rental cars, Xterra, which is for young teenagers or young 20 people, 20-year-old somethings, and I would have a pickup truck, the Frontier. I'd keep that, and I would have different versions of the Pathfinder, and maybe I'd bring back the Quest minivan. I don't know, I probably wouldn't, but that's what I would do. Stefan, any thoughts?
I would do one thing and one thing only. I'd bring back Carlos Ghosn. That's all I do. I
he
would
would
say,
he
I
would
would,
work.
I would tell them, guys, government, you need to drop all charges against Carlos Ghosn. Let's bring him in on a 5-year deal, 3-year deal, and because they were making money when he was around, and it's
I
kind of
love it.
been. But I think I like your idea of the Xterra. I was kind of thinking about that. It's kind of like, you know, it, it's nice that there's a price point where you want to just go in and you know what you're going to get for your money, and you feel like you're getting a lot for your money. And that's that is a real entry buy-in, you know, and I think that's important. And like I said, I would do the small, medium, large SUV cookie cutter thing.
They already have the Monaro and the Rogue.
Yeah,
The Monaro and the Rogue would be the center of gravity of the company.
yes, absolutely. And what was the one in Europe? Was it the Qashqai? Was
Qashqai.
that the Qashqai was used to be the number one selling vehicle in Europe, and that's a Nissan SUV that never came to America. Um, so they can do it, and they did it with that vehicle. Um, so yeah, I think you're right. They're going to be absorbed and financially supported by the government. It's going to take a while for a turnaround time, but I do like your idea of flooding them with fleets. Just take your hits and get the fleets out there because that will get your vehicle on the road and people will consider it. And then they'll come into the secondary market for resale and we'll support your dealer with the parts and everything. And I think, yeah, you can't do that if you're trying to be a top end, unique, boutique, luxury, have a really nice high edition vehicle. You can't do that if you want to be that kind of manufacturer. But you're right, just a utilitarian vehicle company. Just, I mean, middle of the road,
Bare bones.
good bare bones in middle of the road, and have a couple three trim lines. You know, and I think that hopefully they can recover. I mean, I hate to see them go away, but
Yeah,
I never.
they make a lot of money in Africa and South America, And again, Rogues, I would just sell Rogues over there, X-Terras, and of course they've got the large Patrol, which competes with the Land Cruiser. And if you just pull back and say we're not going to be this huge thing anymore that tries to sell luxury cars, we're just going to be bare bones and be a Plymouth for the world, I think they would succeed.
Yeah, I think you're right.
By the way, Carlos Ghosn, I'm glad you brought him up. He is basically confined to Lebanon, which of course is not a place you want to be right now, but he's confined to Lebanon and he really can't leave. And for that, and he's really too old now. But you need a Carlos Ghosn. Carlos Ghosn, by the way, was found by Nissan and Renault, and he was kind of a financial guy, like a literally they used to call him a low cost cutter. And then they interviewed him and said this guy is a great leader, and he was. Well, there's somebody who's 45 or 50 years old in the Nissan world, or maybe at another manufacturer. He would be in another Carlos Ghosn.
I think you brought up a great point there. For them to survive, the number one thing they have to do is cut cost immediately.
Yes.
Stop the burn. That's a great point. And you're right. They need somebody, Carlos Ghosn Jr. And I think your idea of cutting Infinity, and that's hopefully maybe they'll listen to us.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We certainly had examples, Stefan, where we said something and someone said something a week later. It seemed like they were listening. They probably weren't,
Yeah.
but
Well,
um,
Jack Roush told me one time, he said, because I came up with all these ideas for safety patents on vehicles, and we go to find out that there's a variation already done. And Jack said, good ideas are commonly thought of simultaneously. Good ideas are commonly thought simultaneously. So it's
all
just
right, well,
an
yeah.
evolution of ideas and engineering, and you're seeing something going on, and boom, you get the idea, and then somebody is going to have that same idea as well. But so
I
it's
think
not,
I'm sure that's true.
yeah, yeah.
Which is why when the guy sued for the intermittent windshield wiper, and he said that was my idea, no one else had it. I was like, come on, he ended up winning, but um, other people have the idea, and the idea that just you came up with this, and no one was ever going to come up with it
And
seems
no one
silly.
ever thought of it come up with it.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
All right, before we wrap up, I'm going to throw out a couple things, and I just thought of this because of Carlos Ghosn. Then these are just some things I've been listening to. One is, but the Carlos Ghosn thing. Anybody who is interested in business at all, there is a master class lecture from I think 2005, and it was Carlos Ghosn speaking to the Stanford Business School. And if you just type into YouTube Carlos Ghosn Stanford, it's about an hour. It's one of the most fascinating lectures and Q&As I've ever heard by any businessman ever. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, he's amazing. And this was Carlos Ghosn. This is prime Carlos Ghosn. So absolutely brilliant man. Incredible what he talks about in business. I'll give you a teaser. He got asked a question, and of course, he's a very bright Stanford student. And one of them said, how much of business is execution? How much is strategy? And he said, 95% is execution, 5% is strategy. And he changed it. He goes, no, I'm wrong. He goes, 2% is strategy, 98% is execution.
Wow. Well, think
Um,
about it. We talked about with Saturn. It was all
yes,
strategy.
yes.
It was all case in point. It was all strategy. Infinity when they came out, it was all strategy, and it was just what do they call that? Mist in the ear. There's a word for that. I can't think of the word. Vaporware. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Vaporware. It's all vaporware. But yeah, execution. I like that. Yeah,
That's a great point. Saturn is a great example of that. Yeah, thank
yeah.
you. I'm going to surprise you with this, Stefan, being a NASCAR guy. I listened to the entire 1 hour interview. Dale Jr. interviewing, guess who? Carl Edwards. It
Oh,
is,
but that's a great interview.
it was amazing. You can tell that Carl Edwards is much more thoughtful than most athletes, very smart, and extremely insightful. He basically said, you know, a lot of what I did when I was in NASCAR, I was kind of a dick. I kind of fucked up. I took everything for granted. I just wasn't who I really wanted to be. And ever since I got away, I've totally changed my life. And I realized, but he also, which is fine. It's easy to say that. And of course, we all do that in life. But he also basically said, but the flip side is, you know something? You're not going to get to be a NASCAR driver unless you are 100% focused. You're not thinking about outside things. You're not thinking about your wife or kids. You're just 100% focused. And so I appreciate that because it's easy to come along later and say, yeah, I kind of fucked up in the past. We all did, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
I appreciate someone who says, you know something? Unless you have this kind of single-mindedness, you're not going to get there in the first place.
And I think, you know, race car driving is one of those. It's not. They put their life on the line, and if you've got a wife and you've got kids, you're not always going to reach down there and find a pair because you're gonna let your foot off the gas. And that's what Jack Roush always said about Mark Martin. That's why he was the bridesmaid. He said he would just back off, and that's why he was never a champion because he just couldn't always reach down and find a pair. But other guys, Dale Senior, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, even though Max his partner is pregnant now apparently, but these drivers at the pinnacle in the death sports, all the rest. What was the famous quote? All the rest are merely games. Shoot, I'm having a senior moment here. But driving,
Right.
race car driving, yeah.
It was Hemingway. He said, I think it was Hemingway. Bullfighting and car racing are the only real sports. Everything else are just games. I think it was
Yes.
Hemingway.
Yeah, I think you're right. Or is it kind of said to him? But I met Dale Jr. He was a super nice guy. Carl was nice, always, but kind of on edge, tight. I mean, he was, but Dale has been podcasting, interviewing, talking. He is a master at it. He is a fantastic host and podcaster. And I find him incredibly entertaining. And he's such a cool guy. I mean, I would just love to go to his compound and having a weekend with Dale Jr. would just be a blast.
Yeah, what I appreciate about him, and I agree with you, Stefan. I think you're exactly right. There's something about his personality. He pulls people out. He makes them he disarms them and makes them fully honest and just kind of open up. I tell you, Carl Edwards really opened up, and I was really appreciative. One thing I'll say to you, Stefan, and not to get too personal here, but I think about this more now that I'm older. There are things that I wish I did differently when I was young. And then I think now I'm thinking more, you had to be like that or you're not getting into medical school. Forget
Yeah.
about it. All this stuff. I wish I did this. I wish I did this. I wish I had more of a well-rounded thing. And then I've realized now, Steve, if you weren't like that, if you didn't fully commit, you're not getting into medical school.
Yeah. I mean, we had to be super competitive, not rooting for the guy next to you because you wanted him to fail the exam. You wanted the A. You wanted to be the top of the class. And yeah, you're right. It's kind of like it's an academic competition, but it's a competitive marketplace, and it's being ultra competitive. You're just not behind the wheel of a race car,
You're not,
and you're
yeah,
gonna,
and that's what Carl was saying.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up, and I will say, number one, I'm so glad your dad's doing well. That's such a great thing,
Yeah, you're doing great.
and I'm very hopeful that Adams, who has some family challenges, everything's okay for him and his family.
All right, dude. Yeah, best wishes out to Adam as well, and we'll catch you next time. And I'll be a little better prepared next time. We've been a little crazy. It's been a kind of a crazy week here with emotions up and down, but I always enjoy this catharsis of getting my car stuff out.
Yeah, it's fun. All right,
All right, dude.
close this out, man.
All right, so remember to like, listen, subscribe. That way, when we have a periodic podcast, which are about every couple of weeks, you'll automatically get notified and you won't have to be wondering if we've got a new podcast. you'll get a ding that it's up there. It'll be automatically download your program. So see you next time.